Welcome in, everyone. Episode 3 of Job Hoppers. We've made it an official 3 episodes, 3 weeks in the making, and next week's a month. That's a long time.
Pretty solid. That is consistency in the podcast world.
I think so. I'm Jesse Bartko. This is my co-host Melanie Menko, and today we're decided to talk about resumes, cover letters. Are they needed? What's a good one? What's a bad one? How to best format them, everything in between, and just give you our advice on how to properly present yourself on an application to any job. It doesn't matter if it's in the accounting and finance field, HR and logistics, whatever it might be. It's all generally the same principles.
Yeah, definitely. And just to be clear, Jesse and I look over probably 100 resumes a week, if not more. And we really see it all. I mean, we see the resumes that don't say enough. We see the resumes that say way too much. And we just want to give you some tips and tricks that we have learned throughout our experience as recruiters, as well as some feedback that hiring managers have given us as well. And we want to try and highlight the skills that will set you apart from other candidates and put you on the top of the list. And yeah, that's really our goal.
And I just want to start off by saying, please do not put a cover page on your resume. I had a resume submitted to me that had a clip art picture that said the candidate's name, resume, and a clip art picture of 2 people shaking hands.
Wow.
I didn't say no initially. I heard out the resume at least. I went to the second page where the content was, but it's so unnecessary, and it may disqualify you from a lot of jobs. If a hiring manager sees that, that's way over the top and not standard practice. Now, outside thinking I always support, but in this case, you kind of have to stick to what the norm is.
Definitely. And I think that if you're within the first 10 years of your career, you should really try and keep your resume to a page. There's no reason for you to have to expand upon all of your bullet points. That's what the interviews are for, right? The bullet points are just for reference, and you should be able to speak to your ability and to answer any questions that you have regarding the responsibilities that are there. The only reason why a resume should be more than a page is if you're over 10 years in your career, 10, 20, and you really want to highlight the different companies that you've worked for, especially if they're in different industries, to show that diversity. And it kind of goes into our, next point of like the length of bullet points, right? How much is enough? And Jesse, what do you think about the bullet points, and how long should they be? How many bullet points?
I think that really depends on how many jobs you've had, how many good experiences at those jobs you've had, and what you're trying to accomplish with your resume. If you're trying to paint a picture that you're, a great salesperson or you're a great accountant, you really want to build your highlight reel, like treat it like it's a sports reel of your top plays. You're not going to want to see the same play over and over again. If you're in basketball, you're not going to want to see the guy dunk the ball 3 times over. That's not really a highlight reel. That's just a really good player. And, you need to show some variance in your skills and abilities. And that comes from probably, I would say, your most recent position. Close to 5 bullet points is a good number. Everything below that, 4, 3 is okay, depending on, what the actual responsibilities of the job were. And if you had more responsibilities in your most recent role, obviously highlight that as the biggest point. And then if you had another job 3 years ago that was, again, a sort of a very different experience, something that really taught you a lot, 5 is still okay. I think 5 is sort of the good number depending on the other jobs that you have on there.
Yeah, and in terms of what bullet points to put, right? So you don't want to necessarily list your responsibilities as if they were responsibilities listed in a job description. So job descriptions are very, very generalized and sometimes don't really detail out the actual position and what you'd be doing. with your resume, you want to really expand upon those points and give the hiring manager or whoever's viewing the resume, even if it's a recruiter for the first time, more context as to the type of volume that you do for work, right? If you're an accounts payable specialist, instead of having a bullet point say, prepare invoices, the more quantitative figures that you can put in your bullet points, the better, because it'll give the hiring manager a sense of like, wow, she's preparing 300 invoices on a biweekly basis. Like, that's high volume, and she's been at the company for X many years, so she must really be organized and efficient. And it really tells the person at the end, right, reviewing your resume, what you're capable of doing on a larger scale, if that makes sense.
And one thing to consider when you're looking at a job description is your bullet points are the answers to their questions, really.
Right.
They have answer to their problem, really, because they have a problem where they don't have someone to do X, Y, and Z responsibilities. Your resume is, hey, I'm the solution to that problem. And obviously, you're not going to want to go in and change your resume every single time you apply, because every job description is slightly different one way or the other. But you want to sort of create a good understanding of the job you're applying to, or the type of job you are applying to, and build your resume based off of a couple of those job descriptions. You know, if you're applying to an accounting job that needs bank reconciliations, that's the top bullet point on their job description, then you have to go in and make sure that the top bullet point on your resume is how many bank reconciliations you're doing per month, what you did at the end of the month, things like that will offer the solution to the hiring managers. That way, when they open up your resume, they're like, yep, this person has exactly what I need for my business.
Yeah, and we actually use this cool acronym, as cool as acronyms can be. It's called MSA, Made, Saved, Achieved. It's essentially something that we ask all of our candidates, and it's really to to kind of beef up their experience and create a talking point when we're pitching a candidate to a client. So an MSA can really be, for example, an inefficiency that you saw that you created a solution to, a manual process that was too time consuming that you maybe created a spreadsheet in Excel, used Tableau, macros, whatever programming that you're typically using on a day-to-day basis. Like, what did you do to solve that issue? Another type of MSA can be an inefficiency that you saw where you identified maybe different variances and saved the company money, something that you recognize that made the company money because of you. You want to include these types of points within the summary of your resume, because it really shows hiring managers that, like, yes, you were able to accomplish the responsibilities. You check all of the boxes there, but like, what did you do to leave your mark at that company? What did you do to make the company money? What did you do to make it more efficient in your department? Because just doing your job, right, is great, but going above and beyond and being able to kind of create new processes and make things better will set you apart from other candidates. So it's definitely something that you want to try and include at least one bullet point per job.
And I think outside of the actual content of your resume, the most important thing, or one of the more important things when you're looking at a resume, is how it looks. And is it easy to read? And the thing is, especially today, is it going to transfer the data into a company's system properly? If your phone number doesn't transfer, your email doesn't transfer, things like that, if they don't get entered in the system properly, you're not going to get a call back. You might not even get an email back. You'd be like, hey, what happened to that company? Well, your email may have messed up. So the important thing is, and something that I recommend, is always use a Word document. PDFs sometimes get converted into Word documents once they're entered into a system. And from there, they sort of fall apart. The formatting gets all weird. Lines get cut off, things like that. And a Word doc is just something that everyone can open on their computer. It looks the same no matter what version of Word you're using. You could use Word 97. It'll look the same as modern Word. I don't even know what we're on right now. Is it 22 or 20 something? But
you can really tell that you're like a millennial, right? Gen Z is probably like, Word 97. When did that come out?
I know someone that still uses it on their laptop, but not to name names. And sort of looking at a resume, you have to start at the top. Obviously, you want your name relatively large. Make sure that someone knows that it's you, who your name is, how to pronounce it. If you have a tough name to pronounce, sometimes it may mean something to the hiring manager if you put like a little pronunciation guide of how to pronounce your name. That's a little something above and beyond. That's something about your soft skills, because you know someone's going to struggle with your name.
Yeah, and it also makes them feel more comfortable too. Like, oh my gosh, thank God that they put that, because if I called them to do a phone screening and like they don't have to freak out about mispronouncing your name. And it's actually a tip that we give hiring managers too. Like, oh, by the way, their name might be insert very long, difficult name, but you can call him Ken or you can call him Tom, you know? So it's, and a lot of the times when I mention that, they're like, oh, thank you so much. I actually really appreciate that. And the same thing goes with pronouns too, right? I've seen more and more candidates put their pronouns on their resume, which is totally fine. Just like the more transparency and just like openness, right? Of who you are as a person, the better.
And I think that we're sort of moving in the direction where it doesn't matter what anything about you other than sort of your experience, but being best prepared as a hiring manager, I assume, because as a recruiter, it's a very similar situation, but being best prepared. And then in terms of where your information should go, this is a very well debated topic, because there's a way to format a resume that will fit a lot of information, but look a little chaotic. And there's a way that will be very easy to read. And, more often you start to see the two resumes getting thrown around a lot. The one where everything's on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, and that's like name, address, phone number, contact info, softwares that you use. It becomes very difficult to jump back and forth between, okay, so they've used SAP at this job, QuickBooks at this job, and you're kind of, as a resume reader, a little confused, a little thrown off, and taking too much time. And after a while, you're just like, forget it, whatever. It happens. And that's some of the things that you have to avoid. So my recommendation, and of course, everything that we say is a recommendation, not a definitive answer, is make sure your information is in one column, not 6 columns, not 2 columns, not broken up, with skills on the left-hand side and then basketball on the bottom with your interests.
Have you seen, like, sometimes people even have like a little bar? It almost looks like a health bar in a video game where they're like team orientedness and it's like 3 little dots in the bar.
Proficiencies
like,
of your skills.
Proficiencies of the skills. Yeah, I think the overall picture is that resumes aren't meant to look sexy. They're meant to tell a story, and they're meant to really speak to your experiences in a way that will put you ahead of other candidates.
So the one thing that I will say is I speak with candidates about this a lot, is your education becomes less and less important the further you get from it. And at some point, you're going to have to move it from the top, because we all start with our education at the top. It's going to have to go to the bottom. And the point of which that happens is different for everyone, because obviously if you're 3 years out of school and you're still doing internships, that's fine. But your education is probably still relevant. Like if you went to a very, very good school, a well-renowned school, then that's probably something you should keep up top. But if you're 5, 6, 7 years out of school and you only have your bachelor's, you haven't gotten your master's recently, throw that on the bottom. You've probably been in the workforce for 5, 6 years, and you're good. Trust me, you're good.
I feel attacked. Mine's totally still at the top. I think I'm at like 5 years post grad too. So I learned something new.
it depends. What's more relevant, your course experience from 5 years ago or your work experience from this year?
Right.
That's how you have to think of it. And the one thing is, really, if you get your master's, feel free to throw it up top. Then again, that's, that's something you should be proud of, and something that hiring managers look for is, an MBA or, any sort of master's degree in a related field. That's a good accomplishment too.
Yeah. And another point for more entry-level candidates, maybe kids that are just graduating from school, you really want to paint a picture with your resume. And I would start thinking about it, as soon as you graduate, even before, if you're interning. And this kind of goes a little bit off topic, but with any position that you accept, you want to think of the next 2-3 positions that can come from that experience. A hiring manager doesn't want to see that you were a finance intern, then you were a CNA at a hospital, then maybe you went into accounts payable, and then maybe you, if that kind of makes sense.
Finance and accounts payable, I'd work with, but
yeah, we could spin it, but you really want to consider these things, because you really want your resume to tell a story and to see the growth of your career. And it also reflects on the decisions that you've made, right? In taking a new job and leaving a new job. And I think it's really important to try and keep that in the back of your mind when you are searching for jobs. And not to say that career changes are a bad thing, but it's more so whatever's on your resume, can you explain your thought process?
Yes, I agree. And I think, the top 3 points the top 3 things that should be on your resume, if I were to leave, everything else that we just talked about behind, the top 3 things I would put personally, and, you can give your top 3 after. The one thing that I see way too often is no zip code on your resume. I know that you might be applying to somewhere that's far away, or it may be, a hybrid position or a remote position. You don't want them to know exactly where you are right now. That may actually disqualify you from other jobs with the same company or with recruiters, because the way that a lot of systems work is they filter by zip code, not by town name. Because if you have, Manhattan zip code is 10001, that is a radius then that could be searched. If you type in Manhattan, there's still 10 miles of city there. Mm-hmm. that may not be, searchable, and the surrounding areas aren't searchable. You go out to, up in various areas, and the town over might not make the cut kind of thing. And that's sort of the best way to do it, to gain some attraction. And that's how you could actually sort of passively get some more calls back. Then the second thing that I really always like to see is, as we spoke about, the quantity of things you've done. People you've managed, invoices processed, bank reconciliations done, things on sales calls, whatever it might be, how many advertisements you've made, and, campaigns you've run if you're marketing. And that, quantifying the amount of things the things that you have done really puts it into perspective for hiring managers, recruiters, or anyone viewing your resume of the quality of work you've done. And then the third thing that I would always say is, this softwares and skills on a separate section. Very, very important, because when a resume gets pulled into systems, it's probably going to get broken down. And you want to make sure that if you're an expert in Excel, you have your Excel on your resume. It says it there. Someone can search for Excel professionals and it'll pop up. That's the 3 most important things, in my opinion, that I would include on a resume. Obviously, Mel, you might have a different idea, but
yeah, no, I agree. And to piggyback on that, I'll first say that periods are not okay. You don't need them on bullet points. Leave them off, bury them, throw them out the window. Do not put a period after your bullet point. Unnecessary. And I'll leave that there. Secondly, look over your resume, read it out loud to yourself, and check for grammatical errors. You'd be very, very shocked. Almost, if I'm looking over 10 resumes, I want to say that 40 or 50% of them have some kind of grammatical error with them. So just make sure that you're really looking over what you write. And this is your ticket to an interview. This is your ticket to getting your foot in the door. And this is you making that first impression by not saying anything. So for me, I really like to look over the overall formatting of a resume, right? Like how much space does it take up on a page? Does it look well balanced? And like the more you look at resumes, the like more you know how to like format them to fit all of the information in. And I know Jesse would be more than happy to, and myself, but like if you want us to help with like formatting resumes or get like advice on what you should put, how you should word things, you should always try and seek a second set of eyes, even if it's not recruiters, if it's a friend, a colleague, your parents, right? Just getting another set of eyes will help tremendously, because what you might think is acceptable, there can always be room for improvement. And not only that, but like also revisiting your resume after a few months on a position. You always want to be updating it because your job is ever changing. So if you have more responsibility now than you did when you originally edited your resume, you want to make sure that you're adding that, right? And you want to make sure that you're keeping it up to date and you're not forgetting any of the important projects that you worked on. So I think that like focusing on one resume instead of having like 3-4 different resumes is really key. And it should always be a work in progress, and it should always be kind of like, it's really just embodies like what your experiences are and what you bring to the table. And it's a really important piece of paper. So like, instead of just kind of throwing something together and submitting it to like 80 jobs on LinkedIn, really focus on quality of your resume and pick and choose the different positions that you really think align with your experiences. And if you aren't sure, like, of course, that's where recruiters come in. We can kind of explain to you like, okay, well, you're a finance grad and you are really interested in kind of moving into more of the analytical space, whether like a business analyst or more of like a financial analyst, right? Like, we see your resume and we see maybe where you're lacking in experience in software, and we can see the programs that you've used, and we can also recommend like, hey, look, you know, if you want to be a business intelligence analyst, like maybe take some online classes, take Python, take SQL, R, and have that certificate on your resume. I promise it'll set you apart from other candidates, especially if it's a preferred or nice to have, and it's something that you do have. So I think that like as much constructive criticism as you can get on your resume, the better, because it will get your foot in the door. And then once you have that phone screen or meet with the hiring manager, you're able to kind of let your personality shine and give them insight as to the soft skills that you have that might not be portrayed on a resume.
And I always like to say, a resume gets you the interview, you get yourself the job.
Totally.
And I think that, you know, getting the interview is the most important thing. And the question always comes up, should I write a cover letter? What's in my cover letter? And I think as far as cover letters go, is they're a very old school way of speaking more than your resume. Speaking about a particular experience you've had, speaking about something that you've accomplished in your life and something that, you know, throughout your career, you've really been working towards, you know, so that the issue, of course, with cover letters is, and what has sort of come about in recent years, is everyone seems to stretch the truth on cover letters and maybe not be as honest or try to sell themselves too much and go over the sales point into the almost lying point. And that's what you want to avoid. So in my opinion, the modern cover letter is not a story of your biggest accomplishment or, you know, what you want to do for the rest of your life or things like that. Or, oh, this company is so great, and stroke the hiring manager's ego of how great they are. That's not going to get you very far in my thoughts. It won't get you very far because I feel like I could see through that. And I think a cover letter in the modern age is more telling just your story. Tell why you went into this field. What event as a child made you become an accountant, made you become a marketer, made you become a salesperson, things like that. And also, if you have done research on the company, talk about their values and why they align with yours. And in today's market, values are as important as, dollar signs and skills.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, I agree. Keep going. I'm just cheering you on over here because you're killing it.
And if a company, if you truly believe in a company's values, you're going to be able to write a phenomenal cover letter about how, oh, your mom shopped at a farm and this is some sort of farming company. She only bought her meat from farms, whatever it might be. Every week we went to a CSA. I don't know. My mind's on food because I'm a little hungry. It's almost dinner time, but besides the point. And there's so much to it on the personal side that when you read a cover letter, and I'm going to be honest, some hiring managers probably skip right over cover letters, or
what honestly, is this extra piece of paper? Let's get rid of it.
Or they'll get separated in the hiring process. Your resume will get filed somewhere and your cover letter gets thrown in the trash or stuck in limbo and, in the internet. And I think that, if you're going to write a cover letter, make it compelling and almost act like the question is, why hire me? Why should I take the time to hire or to spend money on myself or on that person? Why is that? Why are they the answer to my problem? That's the simplest way of putting it. But don't ever lie, stretch the truth too far. It's okay to not know things. And if you acknowledge that in a cover letter, then you're going to be better off.
Yeah, I agree. And Jesse, you might have a different perspective on this, but I believe that cover letters should actually be catered to the specific position that you're applying for. I don't think it's appropriate to have a generalized cover letter. I mean, maybe some people do, but I think cover letters are really to speak to all of your soft skills and why you would be a good fit for the company, not just for the position, but for the company as a whole. Like why you think that, why you agree with their ethics, their inclusion, why you have checked all of their boxes and why they check all of your boxes. It shouldn't just be some generalized piece of paper that you add on to your resume. I think it should be a little bit more specific. And maybe that's why people don't write cover letters as often, because I find that there's applicants on LinkedIn, which recruiters can see this, but we can see how many jobs you apply to. So if you're applying to 100, 200 positions, we can tell that you're just kind of blindly applying to things, right? So I think that might be the reason why people don't really like to put cover letters. But when you do work with a recruiter, the conversations that we have with hiring managers before we send your resume over, we like to include a little summary, which speaks to the skills that you have outside of your resume and why we really truly believe that you're a good fit for this position and why you're worth an interview. So I think the summaries that we create are essentially the equivalent to a modern day cover letter, right? And that's one of the perks of working with a recruiter, because we're able to have those conversations instead of kind of the generalized automated systems that filter out your resume through a computer. Do you know anything about that? I don't know. It's kind of beyond me, but
since we don't use them, I'm not too familiar with them, but my understanding is that there's certain hot words that need to be hit on resumes in order to make it past an initial screen. And if you don't have those hot words, it'll immediately kick it back. Now, you'll notice sometimes it's 2 days, 3 days after you apply, but you have been rejected the second you apply. And, it's really about catering your resume to your skills. And that's how you're going to find the best job for yourself, not stretching the truth or anything like that. If you just make sure that everything that you've done, that even if you've just been exposed to, is on your resume, you're more likely to make it past those initial filters and then get reviewed by an actual person.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the overall point is that the resume is really your ticket to getting into this interview. So take it seriously. Don't just throw it together. the more colors that you put on, the pictures, the visualizations, the personality. I've actually had a candidate that sent me over kind of like their personality and behavioral assessment. Like it's not necessary, right? We really want to.
That's a unique way of doing it, though. You know, that's something outside of a cover letter that might be outside the box. And if you reach the right person, fine.
Hey,
but the average person, could work. I agree. It's probably unnecessary to the average person.
Yeah, it can totally work. But I think that like less is more. And being very, very selective with the words that you use, since you only have a page to use. So I just want to stress this because I think that like a lot of maybe even entry-level grads are having difficulty getting the first interview. I remember when I was originally applying, right? You're applying all year, your senior year, you're not getting any callbacks. All these positions are like 1 to 2 years experience. Well, I feel like if we kind of focus on expanding on the experience that we do have and not just seeing it as an oversight or seeing it as like, oh, I just did the front desk at this, at a hotel, or, oh, I just answered phones at a restaurant, like expand upon that, right? Like I was in busy season. I prepared X many returns. I worked in a restaurant. We had 500 customers come in on a weekend. Like you really want to kind of give perspective as to like your work ethic and who you are as a person, because there are so many different applicants that apply to one job. And it's like, what sets you apart from another person and how do you fit in culturally is like what you really want to ultimately highlight.
Exactly. And on that note, that is where we will leave you for the week. Digest, redo your cover letters, redo your resumes.
Yes.
If you guys need help, as said, you know, we're not going to edit your resumes for you. That would be way too much. But we're willing to look at them, you know, give you advice and figure out what's going to, you know, what needs to be on there and what doesn't. So feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn and message us, you know, ask us questions. We're more than happy to help. And we will see you next week for our month celebration of job hoppers.
Yes. Thank you guys.